From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of amazing ideas at Stunning Digital Marketing. In today's podcast, I have my good friend Ross Brand with me, and Ross and I are going to talk all things live streaming and an update on what you should look at when you're doing some live streaming. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This podcast is sponsored by Stunning Digital Marketing, the agency that can help protect your WordPress website today. Go to stunningdigitalmarketing.com and see what we can do to help you protect your business investment. That's stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here, and today I'm here with my good friend, Mr. Ross Brand, live streaming expert. How are you today, Ross?
I'm good. How are you, Robert?
Not bad. It's good to have you back. It's been a while. We were just saying before we went to record, we haven't chatted in a while. I think part of our problem is we're both busy and we get sidetracked because we're both fanatic sports fans, kind of a little bit.
So I mean, I figure in the pre-show we talk about a little bit of sports, and then here we are. Might as well have our conversation, on video and on audio. So thanks for inviting me on. It's always great to be on with you. I always have a great time.
Yeah, it is. And I always enjoy talking to you because I think I've told you this over the years. I learned, even though I've done it a while, I always learn. So it's always a pleasure, Ross. And thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
So let's jump into one thing.
Sure.
The last couple of years, you've done a book, and you're working on a new one, aren't you?
Volume 4 will be coming out end of the year, early January.
Yeah, and I would say for anybody in the live stream game, watch for it. It's always my go-to book. It's interesting. Ross does a book of predictions where he has people contribute to the book, and it's always a good read. I usually get both the hardcover, or the soft cover actually, and the ebook, just because it's easier to take the ebook on the iPad with me if I want to reference it. But if the soft cover, I like to read in bed. So watch for Ross's new book when it comes out and get it, because it's probably the most comprehensive live stream book I've ever read. And
thank you, Robert. I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate you doing it. It's one of those things I watch for and I enjoy, so it's a good read. What I want to jump into in live streaming, and we're kind of watching the live stream universe and the podcast universe, and you and I have talked about this over the years. They're kind of merging again. And how important, even on a podcast like we're doing right now, is actually doing a video component. Does it matter? Does it not matter? Stats I'm reading right now says video matters even if it's two people talking. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think by doing video, number one, it makes you fit in better into what YouTube is all about. And whether YouTube video podcasts are technically podcasts based on does it go through a independent host and an RSS feed and all that? Semantics aside, right? Most people who are doing a video talk show, interview show, like we're doing right now, call it these days a podcast. And many of the people who consume it are consuming it on YouTube. So what I advise people that I work with is just turn your camera on when you're recording your podcast. You don't have to live stream it. You don't have to publish the entire video. But at least be able to have video clips that you can then share on social, on Instagram, on, YouTube Shorts, and that maybe you take a 5-minute clip or 3-minute clip that answers a specific question people might be searching for, and you make that into a unique YouTube video. Of course, you can also upload the entire episode, and you can classify it as a podcast on YouTube, and it has its own podcast playlist. It's basically a video playlist that you add a square photo and a square cover image, and you label it a podcast. So why not give yourself those opportunities to be found? Discovery on YouTube and the shelf life of content on YouTube is good. Its discovery isn't always great in the podcast apps. So you're giving yourself another place to be seen, to be found. And if I'm watching, as I often do, and I'm sure other people do, if I'm watching YouTube for video podcasts and video shows on YouTube, most of the time I'm watching what you would call a video podcast. But when I come across a podcast that's audio only, I go, I'll save that for later, right? Because I'm sitting looking at a TV, and so I don't want to look at a static screen or an audiogram. And that's kind of why I say record that video and put the video with whatever you put up. Like you said, it doesn't have to be fancy. It can literally be 2 talking head images, you and your guest, or you and your co-host, or just you, one image if it's a solo show. But people like to watch when they're looking at a computer monitor, or they're looking at a TV screen. They like to watch, and they like to look at people, and they like to see how you're doing what you're doing. And then, of course, still release it as an audio podcast, because then people can take it with them offline, and, they don't have to be looking at the screen. They don't have to deal with bandwidth issues and all that. So I think there's a place for both audio and video right now. And they're kind of converging anyway.
I would agree with you. It's funny. As you know, I used to do this podcast as an audio only. And how I got around it on YouTube is I just throw the audio up there. And the minute I switched to doing the video using StreamYard, which you've used many times, and StreamYard makes it so easy, to be fair. Believe it or not, my podcast listens went up by 50% overnight.
Wow.
And that says a lot. I mean, it's not just the audio. We all know in the podcast space, Apple Podcasts is probably number one, right? Pretty well.
Right.
No, on the Android side, Pocket Casts, which is owned by Automatic, the same company that owns WordPress, is probably one of the most used cross-platform apps. And then YouTube. And it's interesting what's going on over at Google, because they've actually shut down Google Podcasts, or in the process of shutting it down. And I'm not so sure Google knows what they want to do in this space. I mean, they've made a mess over social apps in the past, and I think we might be going down that. You're laughing at me, but it's true.
Yeah, no, I'm laughing because it is true, but I do think they know what they want to do. It's part of this push with video podcasting on YouTube. I think what they want to do is get you to listen or watch podcasts on YouTube Music.
Yep, I think that's the way it's going. And we're seeing some changes with Spotify and some of their streaming and what they're doing. And a lot of that's in around analytics, to be fair. I mean, they're making big changes. We all know Spotify in the podcast space bought Anchor a couple of years ago, which is where I released the audio. So all you podcasters can say to me, why do you use a free podcast host? The same reason you all use YouTube, folks. It's where the community is, right? And it's what works for you. But I think we have some changes coming. Now, the other dirty little secret why I like my stuff on YouTube is, I think, I've had an ongoing issue with Facebook that anytime I post my business domain on Facebook, it just hates me and says, you violated community standards. Go away. And I'm like, okay. So what I typically do on Facebook and Instagram is I post the YouTube version of the podcast, and that gets around this whole mess. So there you go.
And do you do a blog post for your
I do.
podcasts? And are you embedding the YouTube video as well as the?
Yeah.
Okay.
I embed the YouTube video at the top, which is the change I've made. I used to embed the audio player, but now I embed the YouTube video at the top. And then down at the bottom, I have all the typical podcast links that you can point to the audio version if you want to go.
Right, right. So that's a great way to do it. And now you're not relying on whether or not Facebook wants to send you off platform for anything. You can send people directly to that website, that web page, either through an email link or through a link on another platform.
Yeah. And the other thing I do is I still do show notes, and I'm really bad with them, I have to admit. I do AI show notes because we all know the future of this kind of stuff is AI and what's going on in that space. And what I'll do is I do what I call soft edit. So if there's a name that's spelled wrong or a website that's spelled wrong, I'm going to fix it. But all the other stuff, no, I'm not doing it. It's just,
so you're basically publishing the transcript, but cleaning up the names as you show notes, or
Yep, that's correct. And then on the YouTube version, I usually give 3 or 4 quick points on what's in the podcast. So that's
right,
typical.
right.
So that's kind of going. Is there any other sites that are emerging for streaming that we don't know about or that are making an impact?
Well, I think I think Rumble is certainly attracting some big names. I think it's still got a little ways to go on the technical side in terms of being a very easy to use platform. I think if apps like StreamYard decide to integrate, so you don't have to do the RTMP and you don't have to get a separate key each time. I think you'll see more people multi-streaming to Rumble. But it also, I think it depends on what your content is and whether you want to be part of that ecosystem or not. But I think it's a promising platform that needs to be recognized as an option beyond YouTube for live streaming and creating a channel. I think it's always interesting what's really going on with LinkedIn Live.
Yes.
Is that still in beta? Do you still have to apply? Are they making any other changes? I find that that's still an adventure for me. I don't love the whole create an event on LinkedIn thing rather than just either going live in the moment or just creating a post, because a lot of times I'm not promoting way in advance like what I'm sending to LinkedIn. The main place I'm promoting will be the live stream on YouTube, and everything else is sort of the simulcast, if that makes sense. Yeah. So by creating this event, I don't like having this sort of empty thing sitting up there where it's like my show and then maybe I tag the guest and then there's nothing else going on there, because I'm not going to actively bombard everybody for every single show that I do in order to get people to like and click going and whatever on it. So you have all these sort of empty event things sitting up there, and it could look to the average person like, oh, he holds events and nobody comes. So that is an impediment to me to doing scheduled live streams on LinkedIn, and it doesn't always connect. There's still issues, and I wish I knew what their roadmap is, and maybe it's out there, but I'm sort of confused because in '99 it was in beta and it was apply only, and I don't know where it is right now.
I don't know either, and one of my biggest frustrations with LinkedIn Live is I can't live stream to a group, and that just drives me mind So as many people know, I think you know, I co-manage one of the biggest had. One of the things you and I talked about several months ago was us having issues trying to get a live stream feed into that group directly, and you just can't do it, and they still haven't fixed that. And I mean, I get they don't want everybody doing it, but if you're co-managing a group of 10,000 people, and what's even worse is the group I co-manage is a LinkedIn sanctioned group. LinkedIn set the group up, and they still can't do it.
Right. Yeah.
So that just drives me insane. It's like, come on, guys, you know?
Another platform we should mention is Kick,
Oh, yes.
which is I guess I call it a gamers platform. I don't think there's a lot of talk content on there. There is some how-to, with people doing graphic design or video production or things like that. But for the most part, it's a gaming platform. So it's worth noting because live gaming is live streaming. But I don't think that it's a place right now that if you're a business owner or an entrepreneur or creator of, talk type content, that it's necessarily a platform you need to be focused on at the moment. But it's certainly one with potential. And a lot of times what the gamers do first can turn into something that the rest of the live streaming world can take advantage of or learn from or integrate into their own platforms or sign up and become a part of.
I mean, the biggest gaming platform out there for streaming is probably Twitch right now, I would think, right? Still, like, I think
Yeah,
it's
and a lot of the gamers and Twitch people who are part of that, whose primary audience or one of their primary audiences is on Twitch, will do talk content. But it's more the sort of just chatting. They're hanging out for hours. And again, there was a push to get video podcasts on Twitch, but I don't know how well the average weekly show or, shorter form daily show would do versus being a gaming personality or a gaming channel and then adding some fun talk with it. And so, like I say, I'm focused more on YouTube right now, and then I multi-stream to X/Twitter. And the other day I tried actually uploading an edited version of a full video show that I did there as well. And that could be an answer for YouTube too. Again, for LinkedIn, live stream to YouTube, maybe cut it up into segments and upload to LinkedIn as well. Not everything has to be live or streamed as though it were live. Sometimes the upload may be the way of distributing to certain platforms that will get you better results.
Yeah, so true. In 2023, do we have to do more short form content? Do we got to keep doing long form content? Do we got to do a mixture of both? What's your gut feeling?
So this is a highly contentious, debated issue.
I know.
Yeah, exactly. That's why you asked the question, because I would say at the beginning of 2023, and particularly during 2021 and 2022, the thinking was you have to do YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikToks, Facebook Reels, some combination of those platforms in order to grow your business or your YouTube channel or whatever it is your goals are online to get people to watch your show or listen to your podcast. Yep. I think what we're finding is people are binging on shorts and reels and things like that, and they're enjoying that content for what it is. The question is, does it really drive much traffic to long form? Or when a person's in a shorts reels mindset, they're basically a mindset of hit me with 3 seconds of something funny and I'll click to the next one. And I just, like, YouTube stopped linking from your short form, your short form vertical, your YouTube shorts, to your full-length videos. Now, that may change. They may come up with another system to connect the two. So the answer is it depends, I guess. Does it work for you or does it not? I do think if you're a live streamer or a podcaster, you can't rely on everybody going to the episode and watching or listening to the actual episode. If you have a presence on different social media platforms, you should be putting up content that represents, that's related to your show, that is part of your show's branding, and to capture attention that you're doing something of significance in your industry for people who may never go and watch the show. So whether that's a vertical 30-second video, or it's a 5-minute clip, or it's a 45-second clip, or it's a screenshot, or it's a summary, or it's a carousel of images from your show, or a carousel of images that represent what you talked about in a summary, I think you have to put up some content that either promotes or recaps or highlights or gets attention, and be willing to live with the fact that people will watch that, look at that, listen to that content, and that may be where their idea of your show comes from, whether or not they actually click through to go see your show. So I think we need to put vertical back in that, shorts and such, back in that toolkit with all the other ways we would promote something, rather than saying this is what you must do. And then let it come down to, how do those perform compared to other things? Am I good at making them? Do I enjoy making them? Do I have the time to make them? What's more important is making sure you have some content if you're trying to promote and grow your live stream audience, having some content, and that content, again, also works on the branding side.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And it's funny, there's a word you highlight. I want to kind of pull it out and say, make the time to do. Right. And what most people forget is, and you and I know this because we've both been doing this a while, is it's easy to set up a live stream and say, okay, I want to go live. I'm going to go to Facebook. I'm going to go to Twitter, use StreamYard, and be done. But the problem is you and I never just do that. We actually produce it and package it. So I know, like, even with this podcast, I add a header. I'll do an intro for my guest, which is a quick 30-second, but it's still got to be added. Right. I'll add a footer. I have a professional intro I add to the front end. I'll add stuff. And by the time I'm done, and that's doing a soft edit on transcripts, I'm 3 to 4 hours every episode I do, no matter how I slice and dice it. So the point I'm making is that time factor is a big deal, because you can decide, and I do most of it myself. So, I like to do it, but it still is time consuming, and it's not just about going live and just doing it. Right, Russ?
I mean, it's time or money or both, right? Either you're doing it yourself, which is time, you're paying somebody else to do it for you, which is money, and still involves some time because you want to guide how it turns out, and they may not be expert at all aspects of it, even if they're helping you with one or more aspects of it. I mean, the other thing you can do is you can say, growing an audience or branding my show on other platforms, or taking advantage of the fact that I have this content out there to brand myself on other platforms isn't the priority. I'm going to go live. I'm going to enjoy the conversations I have with my guests. I'm going to enjoy the interactivity with my audience. I'm going to enjoy creating content. And an hour show is an hour of content. And basically, maybe I'll optimize it a little bit on YouTube or wherever I stream to. Maybe I'll share it in a weekly email. But I'm not touching it after that. And guess what? I'm not looking to grow a huge audience. What I'm looking to do is have some good content out there, build relationships with my existing audience, build relationships with the guests, and then, it's sort of like your online portfolio. let it rank to the extent that it ranks in search. And when somebody's looking, tell me what you think of live streaming, Robert, or whatever. Hey, let me send you a link to this episode that I did of my show with Ross, or let me send you this link to an episode that I did about podcasting with this other person, or whatever. I think you have to decide after doing all these things for a while, why are you doing it? And is it paying? What are the results? Am I getting any better results for my business, for my brand, for growing, if I do all these extra things or not? Now, I assume, much like myself, you probably do these things at least in part because you feel like it's doing the job. It's part of what doing a show requires. You care about your legacy. At the end of the day, you want to have a list of however many episodes you've done, and you want people to go there and find something that gives them the complete package. It's like releasing an album without an album cover back in the days when people did records. You know, the album cover, the sleeve, the liner notes, it's all part of the packaging. And so this is all part of the packaging, but it doesn't have to be. And you have to decide how much you want to do, how much you can afford to do, how much time you have, and is it giving you any results? And I think there's nothing wrong with going back to the days when live stream started, where, you know, people would just hop on and go live and do what they do and not necessarily have to catalog and characterize and compile everything.
I wholeheartedly
that they had
agree
done.
with you on that one. Yeah, it's so true. And it's funny because by the time this airs, believe it or not, this will be in the lower 370 range. So, you know, I looked at that the other day. I think I've told the story, but I'll tell it again. I started podcasting, live streaming. I started before I started podcasting because I was doing events, and you and I have talked about how we used to do BMX events off a webcam and stuff like that. And then I started podcasting because industry and if you had asked me 4.5 years ago or 5 years ago if I ever thought I was going to go over 300 episodes, I would have said you're crazy. I never, and it's just growing, and a lot of it's about the legacy. A lot of it's about helping people in the community. I mean, I think you and I both like to help people by nature. That's part of it. And a lot of it is to generate income. Like, let's be lying. And I don't do ads. Like I do an ad in the podcast, but it's a self-professed ad, right? So I have no ad. I've had people creative control I want, and that's one reason why I don't play that game. But the other thing is, I think, and I agree with you, I think there's still a good market for people jumping on and saying, you know, let's just go live. But I also think consistency matters. So if you're going to do that, do it every week, do it every 2 weeks, do it, just be consistent. I think that's just as important, right, Ross?
Well, I think, yeah. And I think what happens is when you have 300 something episodes and you've done show notes and you've done a graphic and you've done a blog post for every one, it's awfully hard to take something away and pull back. Maybe you can find ways to do it quicker. I know some people will drop the blog post, or they'll just post it with the video and a sentence or two. But it gets hard once you've established the standard, and it's also your brand. So it's like maybe the only episode somebody ever goes to see is episode 274, right? So when they go see 274, you want them to see the same package as if they want to see episode 1 or episode 300 something. You want them to see your brand as, hey, I'm a professional. Here's my show. I've got a player in there. I've got an embed. I've got some links. I've got a post of some sort. Visually it looks good. So I think we end up doing some of this for ourselves and for not losing out on an opportunity because somebody found something that was less than the level, the bar of professionalism that we've set for ourselves. consistency is important for two reasons. One, if you're getting started or trying to grow, being able to say my show's name is this, I'm on this day at this time, come back and continue drilling that in and in and in again and again and again is eventually going to get some people to make it a destination and come back to watch you. The other thing is, without some sort of consistency, whether it's consistency of when you go live or I release my episodes on this date or whatever it is, I think what happens is it becomes easy to let a week go. And when you see you've let a week go and it wasn't the end of the world, 2 weeks go and 3 weeks go, and next thing you know,
you're at zero.
You're not getting it done anymore. And so consistency has that fact too, is it's often easier to wake up and go, this is record day or this is live day, rather than it is to go, I could do this any day. Why am I doing it today?
And I think the whole key to, if you're going to record, is I know a couple people who turn the live streams over pretty quick. And I think, I turn mine over a couple weeks after, and I do that on purpose because I like to batch record and I like to batch edit. And I think that makes my life easier. So I'll actually sit down on a Saturday where I've got nothing going on and I'll edit 4 podcasts, but then I'm edited for a month. I'm done.
I mean, that's a great workflow. I've heard other people talk about that. They have a record day. They literally may set up 3, 4, 5 interviews or 3, 4, 5 recording sessions in one day, and then they're done for the month. I've never gotten to doing that. Part of it is the show that I'm doing most consistently right now is a panel show in which we discuss topics that are trending, that are in the news and what have you. The more evergreen your show is, the more evergreen your topics are, the more leeway you have to wait. And so if I'm doing a show that's sort of news-based, then it's very hard for me to batch record because you sort of, even when you're live streaming, even the day that something happened, like let's say we go live every Thursday. We go live every Thursday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern, right? Mm-hmm. If something happens on Friday, it's not as interesting a story unless it's a huge story necessarily for the following Thursday than if it's something similar newsworthy level happens on a Wednesday or a Thursday morning. Time recency is a factor in what's newsworthy and what's of interest to an audience. So if you're doing a weekly show, even within the week, there's consideration of what topic you do and so forth. If you're doing evergreen topics, then by all means, batch, make it easy for yourself, particularly if you're not going live. And then also, if you record, there is the option on YouTube where you could set a specific time and every week you upload and schedule it to premiere at that time and then take advantage of the live chat features without having to deliver a brand new episode from scratch at that time. So you can get your community to gather around your premiere and create that live experience in the chat without actually having to go through all the things that it takes to go live in the middle of a working day.
One of the dirty little secrets I'll share that I do is I never mention the episode number in the show. I never mention the episode number in the intro. And you might say, oh, that's bad, Rob. There's a reason for it. If I have something newsworthy and I decide, and I don't do it very often, but I decide I need to preempt something, I just change the episode number on the file name and the uploads and everything else, and I don't have to go re-edit my show. I'm done. I just drop it in and away I go.
Yeah, that's been something that I've had to learn along the way. Not so much because I'm batching, but because there's things in the past that I may have live streamed or recorded that I either didn't make into a podcast or I forgot to make into a podcast, or occasionally there's something you have to pull out of your feed And I don't want to have to go back and renumber all that stuff. I mean, you have that experience in the 80s or 90s of episodes, and it's a nightmare. You certainly, once you get into 3 digits, it's easier just to add the number to your podcast host's notes or whatever, because then you could always go in and change that number if you needed to. But I mean, I've even miscounted, and you could do all sorts of things. You can intend to say have a multi-interview episode, and then you go, each one would be better as its own podcast, or go back and have to break something out of a. So the ability to go back and backdate and do things changes all that. If I come across an episode from 2016, I don't want that to be at the top of my feed. I want it to be in my feed for the one person who might one day look for it. But I do not want that to have a date of 2023. I like to date my stuff. Even after I publish an episode, I'll make sure that the date, like I will put the actual date and time as the time that it was live streamed, if it's a recording of a live stream. Okay. So I haven't done that for every episode going back all the way, but I've done it for a lot of them. And I really enjoy having that information. I could add it to the show notes, but I just like having that, this was done in reverse chronological order, like a resume or, an IMDb site or something like that.
So we've talked a lot about mechanics in live streaming podcasting. What's changed in the hardware side in the last year? Any big microphone changes or any big DAC box changes or anything like that, or is it basically status quo?
I mean, I think the computers have better webcams than they used to, the laptops and computers. So if you're starting out and you don't have a webcam, or you're thinking, I want to get my feet wet and then get a DSLR, you're not under so much urgency to go out and get yourself a webcam right away, an external webcam, so that you have passable level video. I also think that there's a lot of audio options that are changing. Certainly, Rode wasn't the first to introduce this, but they definitely kind of popularized and made it a thing in the creation space, where you have these microphones that are wireless, mobile. You attach them, one to your camera or one to your interface and one to yourself, and essentially you can record wirelessly and in many situations and get high quality audio. So I think the idea that to get studio sound now you have to have a studio microphone is moving more and more away from that. And I think we're going to find that there's solutions coming along that, you're going to put a little box in the middle of the table, and it'll pick up everybody from different directions, and it'll probably align the audio, to level it and process it while you're talking. And so this whole microphone, headphone look may not be necessary, particularly when things are recorded in person. But for now, I still say stay with the basics. Have a decent enough camera that, some lighting so that it looks good, and then, whatever money you have left over, really you put it into audio, because you can get further on a small spend with audio than you can on video, and audio is still the most important part of your live stream from a technical sense, because we're doing talking head for the most part, and so it's what we have to say where the value is more than the visual. Not that the visual doesn't matter, but it's still an audio medium, live streaming. It's a talk show, it's a conversation. The video's the scroll stopper, but the audio's what keeps people listening and coming back and watching and so forth.
Yeah. I would agree with it. It's funny you mentioned Rode with the wireless mics, and I have a set, by the way. They're phenomenal, and that's a good word for it. But really, when I think back, I think Sennheiser was doing it before Rode. Sennheiser used to have a stick mic, and one of the things that you could buy was a wireless kit, so you could take
Right,
that
right.
mic and throw it. We used to do it even with BMX stuff like 15, 18 years ago. We'd throw the Sennheiser on the other side and then throw the wireless receiver into a MacBook. And then you were getting wireless right out of the Sennheiser mic. And they even had a little dongle that you could plug into an audio board. So, and the advantage of that was you could get sound right from the board. And that to me was a game changer back
And you
then.
could live stream with that then, right?
Of course, yeah, you
With
just plugged it.
really it's pro quality audio at that point. Can you live stream with the Rode mics?
I have not tried it yet.
Yeah, see,
So
I'm not that familiar with them other than to see that they're just
I just
ubiquitous.
got
They're
them.
everywhere.
Yeah, I just got them. Rhodes an Australian company, and they're a bit of an innovator. I mean,
Mm.
they make amazing mics. Even I don't use one on my desk, but for smartphones and recording video, they make amazing mics for that. And I wouldn't even hesitate to recommend them. And they're in all price ranges. I think their cheapest one starts at about $80 or $90 Canadian, and then depending on what you want, they go up like exponentially. You
Mhm.
know, and
The
you
other
and I.
thing, yeah, I was just going to say the other thing that's changing, I think, is there are now more and more consumer priced audio interfaces
Mhm.
that have more than enough gain to power the Shure SM7B or other gain
Yeah.
hungry dynamic mics. And so the need for uh, something that adds clean gain to it to boost it isn't necessary anymore. Uh, the company that Focusrite, they came out with the Vocaster, which is a relatively affordable audio interface that's geared towards podcasters and streamers and has more than enough gain to power a mic like this. And now you're seeing a lot of other companies and more affordable solutions. Not more affordable than necessarily the Vocaster, but more affordable than like the Rodecaster 2 or the Mix Pre 3 or something like that. You don't have to have a cloud lifter or other type of preamp booster in order to use a gain hungry dynamic mic. And that means that when you use a mic like this, it's both more affordable, there's less on your desktop, and you benefit from these low output mics' ability to reject noise. So you don't even know if I'm typing on my keyboard or if my fan's on or something like that, because it rejects noise from right in front of the microphone. If I even move back a little bit, you can tell
Yeah,
that how much quieter it gets, let
of
alone
course.
going off axis altogether.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, like I use a mic that's XLR to the mixer, and then the mixer is also a digital interface into the laptop. Where I think a lot of streamers sell themselves short is they don't get laptops with enough memory in them. And I think that or they go to an older laptop that doesn't have an SSDD, a solid state drive in it. I think those are the two
Hmm.
biggies. So I know you're a Mac guy, if I recall right, the long and
Yeah,
thin.
I'm using the base level Mac Mini.
Yeah.
I had always used laptops. I'd always, used the MacBook Pro with a larger screen,
Mhm.
and this is. I went for a budget solution that's really quite powerful, and this only has 8 gigs of RAM. But and if I had it to do again, I would have done the upgrade to 16. But even with 8 gigs of RAM on the new, M1, M2 chips,
Yeah.
it's
Pretty.
your RAM goes a long way, I guess you could say, in a non-technical way to put it.
Yeah. I've gone to a Windows laptop that's, believe it or not, got 32 gigs of RAM, and it's not for the streaming side; it's for the editing side. I mean, editing, the RAM makes a big difference, especially when you start to use stuff like DaVinci Resolve. And I am such the DaVinci fan. I switched to DaVinci probably 4 or 5 years ago for video editing, and what
Wow.
most people don't know is it's free for the
It
base version.
is.
So, and they give you in the free version. I sat down at a conference with a gentleman who did sports work. Here's our sports tie again, Ross.
Yeah.
And who did sports work for Sportsnet. And we got talking about Da Vinci, and I said to him, do I spend the $500 and buy the Pro? Because I would have. And he said, don't do it. He told me not. The Pro told me. He said 99% of what you're going to use is in that free version.
What did
So
you use before DaVinci?
on the PC side, Adobe Premiere or Corel Visual Studio, depending on what I was doing.
So I've been using I've been using ScreenFlow a lot, and I've had a lot of good results with it. But I wanted to try DaVinci Resolve, and I just felt lost when I downloaded it. I just felt like, wow, I might never get this. Even Final Cut Pro, and I've used iMovie before I got ScreenFlow. I did a trial of Final Cut Pro, and even that I felt I wasn't there yet. I needed time, although everybody says it's easy, and I certainly could at least do a finished product on it. But I have to figure out if I move to the next level in video editing, what's the one that I'm going to pick that's most comfortable with. The thing about the Adobe, although I've heard people swear by Premiere and whatever, it's expensive. I mean, it's a recurring fee and it mounts up over time, and the amount and intensity of video editing that I do probably isn't. It makes that unnecessary, right? So
I actually got out of Adobe for everything. So on the photo side, I use Affinity Photo for a long time, and for video, I'm out. So I am 100% out of the Adobe ecosystem. It's getting interesting because two things I wanted to mention is you and I have both talked about StreamYard, and you're a StreamYard lover, I'm a StreamYard lover. What StreamYard does save is us putting in all those RTP keys in. I think you and I have talked in past about how I used to use OBS a lot, and that's like RTP setup city, and StreamYard just kind of makes all the connections to the point that somebody non-technical can set it up. And then what I see coming is the impact of AI. It's really hard to have this conversation without mentioning AI in it. Does that scare you? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Or are you kind of indifferent?
all the above.
Okay.
The idea that I could have a much better transcript or captions running along for people who can't turn their volume on or need assistance, that's wonderful. And if that continues to get better, it's a form of AI, and that would be wonderful. Ways to edit faster, the ability to edit text and get auto transcripts. Again, it's all helpful to people. I still find that doing less editing or dropping it into ScreenFlow, making a couple of cuts and running it through and posting it is still faster for me than getting into the weeds of cleaning up a transcript and then doing text editing. But when I do need to go through and do a lot of editing, I do find that that a valuable thing to have. So the question is really the threat, and possibilities are, when does an AI bot version of one of us do the show? When do we say for this week's podcast, I want my bot to talk about, please talk about the advantages of uploading a video versus live streaming to YouTube. And the bot just goes to ChatGPT and asks that question, gets a list of talking points, pro and con, and looks like me, sounds like me. It's got my voice and now knows how to even my intonations, and now knows how to deliver that 25-minute talk as a fully formed podcast or live stream video or YouTube uploaded video, sounding exactly like I would sound doing it, using the actual content from a ChatGPT search. And then eventually, I don't know how far afield this is, but eventually it's going to be able to characterize our experiences and things. So the biggest problem with it right now is it's very general a lot of times, the output that you get. But eventually it's going to learn from listening to my stories on shows like this, specifics of how I've integrated different types of video or made different types of content. And then it's got those specifics to pull on. So at some point, I don't know if we'll be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a scary but an interesting time, to say the least. I don't think it's going to eliminate people like you and I doing live streaming and podcasts, because AI is very to the point. It's like, if you ask for A, it gives you A. If you ask for B, it gives you B. And I think we still need people to think and formulate answers as we go. So I don't think it will go that way, but I think it's a tool, and it's all about how you use the tool versus it taking over the world, so to speak.
You're right. I think that the person who comes on and sort of delivers the talking points, the predictable answers, the answer that they have given for 5-10 years on every podcast they've been on, that person can be more easily replaced. But and you could say perhaps I give very long answers sometimes because I'm genuinely thinking about your question in the moment rather than regurgitating a script. And so that is the difference, is you're getting answers from me you may not have heard before, because I'm taking every question and processing it through. Where are we now? What are my more recent experiences? What did I read recently? There's a whole lot of stuff going on under the surface. It's not looking at a database from 2002 and beyond and going, what can I pull that answers this question?
It's so true. Like, I think of some of the text conversations you and I have, and I'll throw something at you and say, "Oh, I read this. What do you think?" And you do the same in the web dev realm. And it's interesting because trends have changed from 5 years ago. They've changed from 6 months ago, from 3 months ago. It's just absolutely incredible that we can do what we do and build studios in our house and do this stuff. And we're not in an expensive location, many of us, and we're all, and then, and I look at the stuff coming out, and it's just absolutely amazing. Yeah. So Ross, as always, thank you for your time. What I would do is encourage anybody to go follow Ross on Amazon. So when his book comes out, because I guarantee you it will be a good read. And as I say, I get mine on paperback and Kindle, because Kindle I can search. So if I'm out with a client and I think, I should mention that, which book is that? Is that the last one?
This is the second book. I don't have the third one in front of me, but I figured since you're mentioning it, I'll hold it up so
go ahead.
Can see the cover.
And I always say to Ross, it's one of the treats of my early year. I get to read it. It's always an easy read. He uses usually 100 experts to help collaborate and give them some info. What I tell you is, if you get one of Ross's books, follow all those people on YouTube in that book. No, I'm serious. I mean,
no, definitely.
I follow people like the Ninmins from the Philippines and stuff like that because of that book. And it's an opportunity to learn and grow. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, Ross, where is the best website these days where you're putting all your stuff?
Sure. LiveStreamUniverse.com. LiveStreamUniverse.com. Still on Twitter, X, and you can also tweet at me or send me a message at Ross Brand. So I like iPod or whatever, and then Ross Brand. So that's my Twitter handle.
Thanks so much, Ross. You have an amazing day, my friend, and be well.
Thank you. Thanks so much. This was a lot of fun.
It was. Thank you. This show is brought to you by StunningDigitalMarketing.com, your Toronto leader in digital marketing services. Not only do we protect your WordPress website, we can help you with your site, provide social media management for your business, or even do one-on-one consulting. To find out more, go to StunningDigitalMarketing.com. A very special thank you to Ross Brand for joining me on this edition of the STM Show. Hey everybody, Rob here again. Thanks for listening to the STM Show. It's such a pleasure to have you every week. If you want more on our agency website, go to StunningDigitalMarketing.com. We are your WordPress security experts. We'd be glad to help you out. If you want to learn more about me, Rob Cairns, go to meetrobcairns.online. From there, you can find links to everything I do on the web, as well as book time with me. So feel free. If you want to make comments about this podcast or know a guest possibly suitable for the podcast, please email us at podcast@stunningdigitalmarketing.com, or conversely, you can go to X, formerly known as Twitter, and tweet at me at Rob Cairns. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much, and I love you. Please join us next week for another interesting podcast, and have a great week, everybody. Bye for now.